Welcome back, everyone. We hope you're well fed and well rested because it's time for tennis. Now, it was tough. I had to really warm up. There was a couple versions of this podcast we may or may not have done in like under 30 seconds. We do have 3 tournaments this week. We'll get through them. We've got the French Open coming up in a week, and it's always a very tricky week the week before a slam. You know, Candace, as you handicap tennis and look at it, what kind of things do you look for to do and avoid just in general in this week before, a Grand Slam event like the French Open?
I think we all tend to look maybe away from some of the bigger name players who you feel like have realistic ambitions within the major itself. I tend to look for players who have really been kind of on hot form, riding a little bit of a winning streak. Sometimes you can see those players make something happen when you know some of the bigger names who would routinely beat them, or maybe just looking ahead to the week to come. But I mean, we have tennis. They'll technically be playing, and that about summarizes the week.
It can be a good opportunity, like you said, to attack some of those names. How about you, Steve? What do you do in these weeks before Grand Slams? How do you adjust?
I normally just watch the qualifying for the Grand Slam, but instead, we've got 3 separate tournaments. Look, I'm not jumping into anything too short. It's you'll look back through, and I think, some players who have never won tournaments before have put in their best efforts. I think the week before Grand Slams, they're generally the most gettable, I guess, across the calendar year. But at the same time, we've got Novak playing this week in Belgrade. So that's not something we generally see from him the week before a Grand Slam. But looking at some of the other draws, there's certainly big opportunity for it's those mix of players who, are happy to kind of attack these draws, and also players who are, perhaps ranked a little too low for Roland Garros qualifying next week, but are looking to try and earn some decent ranking points.
Let's jump in then. I think we're going to start with the tournament in Belgrade, right, Stephen?
Rightio.
Mr. Djokovic up there, the top seed in his home country again, didn't win the first time around. Basilashvili there is the 3. We have a couple other Serbians, Kekmanovic, Lajovic, and a handful down there in the middle. We'll start with you, Candace. How do you see the top half of this draw shaking out?
Well, I had just spoken about how I try to kind of fade the top players in these spots. I will say it was a little bit difficult for me to do with Djokovic. He's not exactly here in some imposing group of individuals. I wound up having Kekmanovic beat him. That's probably a lot to ask considering they're compatriots, and Djokovic tends to have a little bit more motivation against his fellow countrymen. But Kekmanovic has had a solid couple of months coming into this. He's just one of those guys who, in a match, I don't expect him to quit. So knowing that my gut told me Djokovic is going to lose somewhere, I just kind of picked that as the spot, to be perfectly frank with you. I ultimately have Laslo Djere making his way through this section of the draw. He's had points during this, I'd say clay court swing, but I'd say the year as a whole. He's had some points where he's really impressed me, and it does feel like he's starting to really get things together and really put himself in a position where he can make kind of small runs in some of the larger tournaments. So in a tournament like this, I expect him to go quite well. I think that his portion, obviously no Djokovic there, and really nobody who is too terribly imposing. So for me, I had Laslo Djere coming out. I'm sure many others will have Djokovic going much further, but it's just one of those spots where in my head, he's going to lose somewhere, and you just have to pick which spot it is.
So just for the people who are looking at the screen at the moment, Djere is in that qualifier lucky loser double.
Yes.
Just there. So he's been placed into that spot. Because I had a mild panic there when I was looking at the screen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Basilashvili and then the bye, and then Djere is, I think, the top in the qualifier lucky loser spot.
Yeah, Steve, how do you see this shaking out? Normally we tee this up more as a way to start a conversation. It's this person or anybody else, but it really does. Novak, again, didn't win this tournament the first time. I'm sure he wants to win a championship in his country. There's a lot of stuff like that, but we know what's happening next week. What do you think?
Look, he had some interesting things to say about his own court last time around. I think when he lost to Karatsev in the 3rd set. Look, it's really tricky because, look, you do want to go against him, but, when you look at his odds, he's minus 300 or $1.33 for a reason here. it is hard to make a case. I think for a lot of players, I think, as Candace said there, I think Ger or a similar player is probably a solid approach from that second quarter. I think it's trying to find someone outside of Novak's quarter. I just don't. I can't picture him wanting the full week before Roland Garros. We know what his target is here, but he's also obviously obligated to play his home tournament. So it is a little bit of a mixture. I'm struggling to see anyone in that top quarter beating him. It's just a matter of, you can look back to some of his performances, at ATP level since late last year. That one in, was it Vienna against Sonego? He kind of picks his battles a bit at times. So if you want to take the minus 300, by all means, and good luck to you. I can't see him losing in that quarter there, but maybe a Ger or some kind of performance from Basilashvili, who seems to either lose early or win tournaments, is the way to go.
Yeah, I agree with what we've talked about in general, trying to fade some of the bigger names. But as you look at everyone on this list, it's like, if he really cares even a little bit this week, I mean, he can comfortably go through all these matches. The final is the day before the French Open starts, but I'm sure the folks at Roland Garros will make sure that he gets some sort of, day off kind of dispensation or something like that. But it's just hard to get excited about anybody else in here. I know you guys touch on some names. I mean, maybe a young guy like, I don't know, Korea put it together or something. I don't know. It's just, you try to talk yourself into stuff and you feel sillier the longer you go. So, sure, Novak.
I spent a good 15, 20 minutes earlier trying to talk myself into Jeremy Chardy. And that's where I'm at with my life at the moment. This is how I'm spending my time.
I think that just sums up the first half nicely, guys. Are we ready for the second half?
I don't know if I am after that.
I'll try to do something to pick up the mood, which means we've got Gael Monfils. He's going to play tennis. He's always fun. I like watching him jumping up and down. It's very exciting. He's our 2 seed, the man Rhino there in the middle. Krajinovic, our Serbian seed down here in the bottom, Delbonis. It's just some more interesting names down here, but again, it's hard for me to see anybody here beating Novak if he's there in the final. What say you, Stephen? Well, it'd be easier to hear what you're saying if you weren't muted. So let's try that again. What say you, Stephen?
I'm not sure you want to hear what I have to say.
Subconscious muting.
It's not going to be very often, I think, moving forward that we'll have Monfils and Mannarino as the 2 and 4 seeds in a draw. Yeah, look, it's tricky. I would probably lean towards looking to the bottom quarter there. I think there's probably better players who are in form when you look at Delbonis and what he's done recently. Even, Rinderknech last week. I think there's some decent form there. Another player to keep an eye on is probably Thiago Monteiro. I think he is someone who you could keep, again, could put together a decent performance the week before a slam, but it's trying to find, I think, big prices here the week before a slam. But that's, again, you can see why Novak's minus 300.
Yeah, it's a shame those names you mentioned, Delbonis and Rinderknech specifically, are in the same quarter as well as Montero. They might be interesting if they're a little split up. But I think it was one of those names that you liked above them all, Candace. I think you jumped on board with one of them. Who was it?
I did. I mean, Phil, I'm going to take partial credit for him finding his form, because ever since Taro Daniel Gage devastated me, Delbonis has gotten it together. And, he's gotten it together largely against guys who are of a higher ability than what we're seeing in this bottom portion of the draw, especially on this surface. I mean, even times when he's lost, you look to when he played Berrettini a couple of weeks ago and lost to him. I mean, that was a really solid competitive match. And those are the types of players I like looking for, not just ones who've been able to put some, victories in a row, but guys who, when they're losing to a player who's just better than them, they're at least making it close and not getting blown off the court. I like him in here. I understand some are going to look at his odds and say that he is so short considering Djokovic is in here, but you have to keep in mind that I don't think Djokovic makes it to the final. So if I'm removing him out of context, then you're taking Delbonis, at the odds he is for against everybody else. I mean, this is not, I don't know. This is like a 250 tournament if you don't have Djokovic here. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. How far do you think Djokovic is going to go and then work from there?
Yeah, I think whoever comes out of that fourth quarter could be interesting again in the version of this tournament where Novak just kind of shows up, collects his check, plays a match, and heads to Paris to get ready. So we'll see how it goes. But the fourth quarter could be interesting. I guess the only other thing I would add is Krajinovic. If he is going to find some success on clay, this might be a nice spot. This looks like a very winnable quarter. Again, in his home country, hopefully he's going to be comfortable there. It's outdoors, which isn't his best, but those are names again. As I look, sure, but I feel like I'm trying to talk myself into it. I'm not actually excited about them. But any other thoughts here from you guys in the second half?
Again, like for me with Krajinovic, it's like I'd rather be getting into him at a price of like 200 to 1 in a tournament than looking at him on the kind of that second or third line of betting. And I think the only other thing is, 5 years ago, I would have loved to have watched Verdasco versus Pui. Now they're playing in the first round, and I, to be honest, could not care less.
People get old. Things move on. We now finish the very somber Belgrade break. So we'll get to our picks, which are hopefully a little more cheery. We'll see.
Speaking of old, we may as well kick off with yourself, Alex. Who is your ace for the tournament?
Give me a second. I got to recover. Novak Djokovic. I mean, as I sort of hinted at, there's really two versions of this tournament. Either Novak shows up, he wants to win, and just kills everybody. Might not possibly drop a set here if he's really focused and interested in winning. Or he doesn't. As we went through that whole draw, there was no one else that could really get me excited enough to really consider that other option. So, Novak.
Fair enough. Candice, who have you gone for as your ace for the tournament?
I have gone for Delbonis. I'm opting that Djokovic, the one who shows up, is going to be the latter. I think he's here because he's compelled to be here with it being in his home country. I can't imagine that he wants a full week's worth of tennis. So I'm going to look to somebody else. I like that the section of the draw that Delbonis is in, and I like that he's as far away as possible from Djokovic, so we have plenty of time for him to lose prior to that. So I found myself going to Federico Delbonis. Though I will say, we've had so many tournaments this year where there's been seconds and thirds of tournaments that I'm not sure we wanted in the first place. And I'm going to say Belgrade is one of those.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree. Look, I've gone for a different left-hander down the bottom. I've gone for Thiago Monteiro. Again, pick someone as far away from Novak as you can. Hope Novak isn't really interested in the weekend and try and find someone who can make a run. Look, Monteiro's form hasn't been great, but I think he's lost 3 setters to Gier and Tommy Paul, I think it was, from looking. So, look, it's not the worst form, but look, happy to go at that kind of 40 to 50 to 1 outright price the week before a slam. Now, if we move on to our value picks, we'll start again with you, Alex. Who have you gone for as your value pick for the tournament?
Again, in that universe where Novak comes out and is motivated, I think minus 300 is a really valuable price. As I start to look at some of these matchups and think about what some of the lines are going to be, he might not be cheaper than minus 500 the whole way through. He's got to buy. Then it's a qualifier Gerasimov that's minus 1,000. Then it's Kekmanovic, again, minus 400, minus 500. Then you're looking at that second quarter. It's probably, again, minus 500 to 1,000. You start to put all those together, and there's actually a little bit of value in this number. I'm not sure that if he plays every one of these matches that you parlay them all together, that you do significantly better than minus 300. So in the universe where he cares, this is a great price.
Is it the universe that we are in, though? That is the question. Now, Candice, who have you gone for as your value?
Well, I'm in the universe where he doesn't care. And if that were to happen, I had it framed out as a Laszlo Djere, Federico Delbonis final. And if that winds up formalizing, then I'm totally fine with Delbonis' prices representing value. Again, he's been playing really well coming into this. His losses have not been bad losses. We know how well he plays on this surface in particular, which you can't say about everybody here. And he's just not perfect player for a tournament like this. We don't have French Open aspirations. He's looking to kind of clean up some of these while he can, especially at the end of the clay court swing. We know that he's significantly better on the surface. So I could see him putting in a real hard push to try to pull out a tournament after he's had, several times that he's been making it deep recently. So we'll go with Delbonis' value.
That seems more than reasonable. And I have gone a little bit rogue. I mentioned him earlier. Because I spent 15 to 20 minutes looking at Jeremy Shardy and what he could do, I felt almost obligated, I think, to pop him in here as value. He's shown some patches this year, I think, that have been certainly better than 2020 was. It feels like either a lose early or, he could make that Final Four and become a decent trading spot. But again, as Alex has alluded to, it does depend a little bit on which universe Novak's motivation lies, I guess, for this week. Alex, moving on to your unforced error. Who is your unforced error for the tournament?
So now we're going to consider the other universe in which he's not really that motivated. I think my unforced error has to be Novak Djokovic. Whether or not he tries, I kind of have to give him a pass. He doesn't really need to win this tournament. He can show up. He's got a bye. He'll collect a paycheck for his first round, even if he loses in the second round and doesn't really even play. I mean, it's heads to Paris. He's got a week to prepare. There's no reason. If I'm Novak Djokovic, I might, play a match or two, try to get some practice here playing, serious opponents is probably better than whatever going to get there. But make sure that I have plenty of time to get a plane at a time that I like, get a hotel that I like, get there, get all set. But it'd make a ton of sense if he, there's that other version of the universe where he just was kind of like, all right, thanks, Serbia. See you next year.
Candace, do you agree?
I agree. Next.
I'll just jump mine into. I completely agree as well. And again, I just don't have. I don't take minus 300s in single matches, let alone an outright for an entire week. Worst case scenario, I think for him, I can picture is kind of it comes to Thursday, the draw's out at Roland Garros. He realizes that he has an easy draw. He pulls out of Belgrade, but then kind of stands around on the court and hits tennis balls in the crowd and says, I love you and thanks for being here in Belgrade at my tennis tournament. You just can't get involved, I don't think, at the price. I think that's all we really have to say because we've all got Novak as he's been the overvalued player as well. So we may as well just wrap up the tournament there, shall we?
I laid out the case for minus 300 being value. Don't bet that. I'm not going to bet it. But I'm curious. At the end of the week, I'm going to check. If he does go through the whole week and win all those matches, I will go back and do that math and let you guys know how it went. But it might be better. Don't. But
shall we move on to Parma?
Let's do it. This one's a little more interesting, I think. Hopefully we get Steve excited this time. First quarter, Lorenzo Sonego is our 1 seed. We've also got Nishioka there as the other seed. Second quarter, Struff and Paul are our seeds, but a few interesting names there in the first quarter. What do you think, Candace?
Yeah, I agree that you have a few interesting names. I found this tournament to be a little bit more interesting than the last one overall. In that same regard, though, it felt like it was also kind of a mess. It felt like it was a lot more guesswork having to go into kind of deciding which of these guys are going to kind of get it together and take a step forward. I feel like there are a lot of men in this tournament who, again, we've seen little pops of ability, and they have not been able to sustain that form for significant periods of time. The one thing I will say I love is having Lorenzo Sonego as your number 1 seed because I don't really want much of anything to do with him in there. I found myself instead leaning towards Musetti. I think that first round match, admittedly, could be difficult. So he'd have to make it past that. I feel like we've seen that a lot recently, or at least I have, with some of the guys who've appealed. They've had difficult first round matches, but you feel like if they make their way through that, then they could make something happen. It did feel like over in Lyon that he was able to get it together a little bit, solid victories over Felix. Even when he played against the Tsitsipas, he was able to take a set off of him, and we know how well the Greek has done in the clay court season overall. So I have a slight lean there to Musetti, despite the very difficult first round match. As far as the bottom end of that quarter goes, I found it to be a little bit more difficult to work it through. I wound up leaning over to Stefano Travaglia, but that was more kind of a product of his draw than anything else. I just felt like the way it mapped out for him was a little bit kinder than some of the others. But overall, in this section, we'll lean towards Musetti.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that Italians in that first quarter are real appealing. There's a couple you could pick. Was there one that stuck out to you, Steve?
Wasn't Sam Querrey.
He's not Italian.
No, I do think that if you could find a way to bet somewhere that an Italian would win this tournament, I think that would be a good play to make. Yeah, I think that Majer-Mazzetti match is probably going to shape that first quarter. I think to an extent, I think either of them should beat the winner of Querrey and Nishioka. I just have question marks with Mazzetti, and I don't know if it's just from watching him more this week. Like, he's got all the shots, he's got everything that he needs. He just doesn't quite know yet how to put it all together. And I think in moments of high stress and a little bit of fatigue, the decision making just drops off significantly. I think we saw that, was it against Bednay the other day? I think he served an underarm serve down break point at 6-5, like little things like that. You're like, what are you doing? Like, you've got such a good serve, you've got so many weapons, and you're pretty decent at hitting a drop shot. Just, play to your strengths. I do wonder, he got bageled by Tsitsipas, I think in that third set, and he didn't look so good towards the end. So look, it is harder to maybe make a case. I think, Sebastian Korda, I didn't mind last week. He just had a little off patch, I think, particularly late there against Mazzetti. But again, it's hard to trust some of these younger players playing week on week just before a Grand Slam. So it's hard to make a strong case, I think, for anyone there. But maybe Majer, if he can get through Mazzetti, it'd be one of those kind of take it as a long-term outright look, as opposed to just that head-to-head match.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like I said, I think it's Mazzetti and probably Sonego there in that quarterfinal. Maybe it's Seppi, maybe Maguire, knocks out Mazzetti and makes a little bit of run here. But I think that'll define it. It could be fun. I think the winner of that quarter takes care of whoever's in the second there. Tommy Paul's really struggled. Maybe Struff can do something here. It's a nice draw again. If he's going to do something on clay, this is a spot for him to start. But I think it does come down to that first quarter. Any other thoughts here for you guys before we jump into the bottom half?
I'm happy to keep on moving.
Let's do it. Bednay are seated at the top with AARV there, the 3 seed at the bottom of the quarter. Gasquet and Paire are seeds at the bottom. Now, Steve, there's a name there at the bottom. It's staring at you in the face. It's a name that you said you weren't going to pick, but maybe you went back on your word.
Maybe. Look, it's Munar. He continues to kind of frustrate and elude me at both Challenger and ATP level, which is impressive to do it across both levels. I just think, when you look at him and you look at what he's been able to produce, I guess you're getting the most consistent through that bottom quarter. Benoit Paire, not really sure what we'll get just before a slam. Simon and Gasquet are up and down at this stage of their career, and the rest are qualifiers. So, look, it's hard to not kind of be drawn to him, I think, in that fourth quarter. Looking to the third quarter, I think it's a great advantage, I think, for Robert Ramos to have that bye in the first round. And when you look to the rest of that quarter and the form that they're in, I'd imagine that Ramos is probably favourite through, almost through to the final. Who there would be a favourite against Ramos on form?
No one sticks out to me. What do you think, Candace? I can't see any names that would be favored over Ramos.
I can't. I would see him being favored against anyone else there. I think with Cecchinato off of Geneva, maybe that would be the closest, but I can't see him even being favored over Ramos.
Yeah. What do you think of this half in general, Candace? I mean, as I looked at it, I think Munar is a solid pick if he can put some form together. Maybe Paire cares. I don't know. This was a really tough half. This was as bad as any half that we're going to look at this week for me. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the appeal of someone like Ramos to Steve. He gets the bye in the first round. Second round, you think maybe Ruusuvuori, though I don't think since Ruusuvuori won, I think it was a challenger tournament on clay back in 2018. I don't think he's won a single match on clay since then. I could be wrong, but I don't believe he has. So, for a true clay quarter like Ramos, that should be pretty comfortable. I wound up going with Cecchinato just because the two of them have played each other, and we have seen the Italian beat him before. And I wound up having Cecchinato going against Munar, and I like him to beat him as well. I just think, for me, Marco Cecchinato, I like what we saw from him last week over in Geneva. He's able to really kind of take it tough there with Shapovalov. That third set, maybe not so much, but those first 2 sets were relatively close. And again, that's a player who just is significantly better than him. So I took a little bit from that, and I think at the end of the day, he's a seasoned player. He's been around for a long time. He's shown a little bit more consistency this clay court season, and when I see a kind of section that looks chaotic to me, I tend to look to those guys where I feel like I reasonably know what to expect from them. So I wound up going to Cecchinato here. So I have an all-Italian final. Since
I like it.
if you're looking for that Italian to win here at Parma, man, my draw sets up perfectly for it.
I can dig it. Yeah, I would like to pick Cecchinato as someone that backed a bunch this year to very little success. It was nice to see him to put together a little bit of form, but I'm just not ready to go back to bet yet for him. So I think it's probably ARV, but again, maybe Munar, maybe somebody like Pair again. Just somebody kind of snaps in and just has a random week here before the French Open.
And we're saying maybe Pair. That's how you know what we feel about the tournament.
That is a great way to describe this week. Maybe Pair. Anything else from you guys on this draw? Are you ready to hop into our picks?
Ready.
I reckon we just jump straight into the picks. Candace, do you want to lead us off with your ace for the tournament?
Sure. My ace for the tournament is going to be Lorenzo Musetti. We used this same kind of tactic last week to success. I basically said, I'm going to pick Coco because I don't like anybody else. That's exactly the same thing for doing here. Don't really love anybody else. Again, I don't love that first round match for him, but he should be able to make it through. And from there on out, I think the draw opens up. So Musetti for me.
Sounds pretty good to me. Alex, who have you gone for as your ace?
I agree with Candace. I think this is a great spot for Musetti to come out, make a nice long run through a tournament. We talk about draws and things, but as much as a tough draw makes your tournament harder, at the same time, I think a couple challenging matches early on kind of really hone you to do well as you kind of finish through the tournament. And I think that that first match might be a little more challenging than indicated. And then when he gets to that quarterfinal, I think once he makes it through that, he'll have what he needs to close out those next 2 matches. Again, not scared at all if whoever comes out of the second quarter or the bottom half. So happy to back Musetti here to win.
I'm going to have to go for someone. Oh, well, I'm kind of going for someone else. I'm kind of not. My ace is insert name of Italian player here, or Wamina if I have to. I think there are just, the week before a slam generally kind of gravitate towards the players who are playing at home, unless they've, like Novak and have, bigger fish to fry next week. I think there's some good draws there for the likes of, I think that Musetti, I think Margera is a really tough first up opponent for Musetti. But I think if Musetti can get through that off his long week last week, then he should be able to make a decent run here. But yeah, looking to the bottom, as I said, there's Gasquet, Simon, Pair, and Juan Munar, and a bunch of qualifiers in one of the weaker qualifying draws that we'll see. It seems like if there was ever a spot for him at ATP level, this is probably the spot for him to make a little bit of a run. Looking to the value pick, I kind of touched on mine as we went through that it is Elliot Ramos. I don't think he will be an underdog, I think, until he gets to probably the final. The first round bye obviously does help him a little bit from an outright and rollover perspective, and I think that's a decent spot there for him. Candace, who have you gone for as your value pick?
Well, I think it's a testament to how I feel about the bottom half of the draw that my value pick, much like my winners in the top, I went with Stefano Travaglia for my value play. This is a guy who, when you go through his recent form, you'll find that he hasn't been making it far in tournaments, but he's found himself in a couple of, really difficult draw positions. I believe he played Krajinovic first round over in Belgrade 1. And then in Madrid, he played against Pablo Andahar, and that might have been in qualifiers. I mean, he played Shapovalov recently. So he's had it very tough, much tougher than this tournament's going to throw at him. The concern, of course, is that he did withdraw over in Geneva, but if he's showing up here, so I'm going to take it as physically he's okay. But I'm really leaning heavily in the top half of this tournament.
And Alex, who's your value pick?
So Something I mentioned as we went through, again, I think the winner does come out of this first quarter, but Struff has one of the nicest spots in the draw with the bye. I agree, Candace, maybe Travaglia can be tough there, but he just has a tough first match there to get through there, and I think Struff will be the favorite. If he can sneak past the quarter one winner, he'll be the favorite in the final. So at the 14-1, 15-1, I'm looking at, again, with the bye, I think there's some value in him in this small field and an easy quarter.
Now, unforced error-wise, so Candace doesn't have an unforced error. My unforced error I'll get through very quickly. It's Sam Querrey. Good to see that we found him again. He's back on tour again, deciding to play this tournament. Haven't seen anything from him enough to consider him in any outright perspective. But having said that, looking at the golf scores at the moment with Phil Mickelson, apparently you can just kind of turn it on whenever you want late in your career and make a little bit of a run. So who knows? Maybe I could be wrong here, but I'm happy to just kind of avoid Sam Querrey in all facets of this tournament. Alex, who have you gone for as your unforced error?
A man whose life, in a way, is an unforced error. Mr. Benoit Paire. We don't know what he's going to do, when he's going to try. Anything is possible. It's all open for him. It's just one big unforced error.
Strong answer.
Yes.
For the sake of time, who would like to speak on behalf of all of us who have gone for Lorenzo Sonego to be the overvalued player for the tournament?
Favorite in the hardest quarter. Anyone else?
Done. Perfect.
Works for
and that
me.
just about wraps up the men's portion of this week.
Oh, look at that smile on Alex's face.
I thought I was going to you guys like my pair joke. I was really enjoying that. I know we are going to talk about women's tennis, but this isn't really that fun. Unless they have hardcourt somehow. Unless we get there and they do a reveal and it's like, aha, no play.
Can I just say, just before we do start covering off the women's tournament, kudos to Candace for picking both Coco Gauff and Paula Badosa last week as her aces of the tournament.
Yay!
I'm sure you had a lot of money on the double because they're both very trustworthy on clay, and I'm sure it all just went swimmingly.
That's how it goes. Win, win, win. You know me. My bathtub's full of dollars.
We'll start with the women's tournament there in Strasbourg, France here. If she decides to show up, our number one seed is Bianca Andreescu. She's in a quarter with Shuai Zhang, Yulia Putintseva, and Magda Linette there are seeds in the second quarter. Some more interesting names there in the second quarter to me. I wish there were some better qualifiers for the top quarter, but how do you see this going, Steve?
Not a lot to really talk about from that first quarter. As you said, if Andreescu turns up, she turns up. She took that week off before the Australian Open as well. I think she opted to train instead of, play a match or two. I think she's obviously kind of here for the bigger tournaments and to hopefully kind of catch some form. I think when she reaches it, she's surrounded by 3 qualifiers, so that's a great start for her. Venus Williams, I'll just move on. Castella, she did get injured, I think, in her last tournament, and this is probably her way of kind of testing things leading into Roland Garros. So hard to really gauge what her level of fitness is here. And then you've got Doi and Zhang. It's probably not the strongest quarter on clay that we've seen. But look, you could potentially make a case for a Zhang or Doi to make a little run there to the quarterfinal, to be completely honest, particularly if Castella is not at 100%. Looking to the second quarter, Peterson's been pretty disappointing. I think the last 6-9 months, I guess, almost probably actually since the start of 2020. I think we had such high hopes for her kind of taking that next step, and it just hasn't eventuated. Looking through the rest of those names there, Putintseva has disappointed me a couple of times recently, so I kind of gravitate towards Jill Teichmann, to be honest. To be fair, though, agree with that. The last time I said that, I think Blinkova beat her in the first round. So I'm more than happy for history to repeat. That was on North American hardcourt, though, so I'm happy to kind of side with her, I think, out of this half in general.
Yeah, I like that. What do you see here, Candace?
Well, it says something about this section that I like Shuai Zhang. Now, I can't remember the last time that she's made it through 2 matches in a tournament. It's been a while. You might have to go all the way back to the French Open, but we know from what we've seen from her at Roland Garros that she is capable on a clay court. I don't think this section in general was filled with players who love this surface. Andreescu, you guys touched on it. Who knows? I mean, if she's okay and fit then and shows up, then maybe she just storms her way through this. But I'm looking at it from the alternative perspective. And so in my section, I had it going Zhang from the top, and then I had Teichmann and Magda Linette on the bottom, which would be a fun match if we were able to get it. But Zhang has had some success against both, and I could see her having that, especially here on the clay. So, I mean, I'm obviously not sitting here with a ton of confidence. We're talking about a player who's been very, very, very off form. But, if you have Misaki Doi first round, then whether it's Cercea or Venus there in the second round, I mean, the opportunity is there if she's able to refine what we saw from her a little bit less than a year ago.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Steve. I think this comes down to the winner of that Putintseva-Teichmann match. Maybe Linette, maybe somebody down in the bottom, like even Cornet could make that quarterfinal challenging. But I think, again, whoever comes out of that Teichmann-Putintseva match takes that and should have plenty to beat whoever comes out of that first quarter. Again, I wish we had more interesting qualifiers. This would be a fun week to look at a qualifier in that first quarter, but there's not anybody who stands out.
And I think, when you look at it, you could potentially, playing at home, make a case for Cornet as a longer outright, but it's just going to be a stressful watch and not worth your time or your money, to be honest. There's going to be a point in time where she's going to be losing, and there might be a medical timeout, or there might be a lot of complaining. And it's just hard to really find yourself getting invested, particularly with a Grand Slam next week as well.
Yeah, it's there's better ways to spend your money, folks. Are we ready for the second half, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Krejcikova, Alexandrova, Shelby Rogers, and Jessica Pegula are our seeds here. Pretty competitive third quarter. The fourth looks kind of wide open to me. What say you, Candace?
I thought this bottom half had so much more intrigue. You have several players in here who have a lot of power, who could kind of wield their way through some of these matches. I say that, though, and it ended up being fairly boring. And in choosing Jessica Pegula, just like what we've seen from her as of late, she just seems to be a little bit further ahead from some of the other players in here, whether that's a Shelby Rogers or a Caroline Garcia, who are just a little bit more hit and miss. If you like either of them, at least the price is there. Pegula quite short at this stage, but I look at her as being easily the most consistent at this stage through this section. So I went with her. And to be frank, if you're looking for someone who has a nice path there from a draw perspective, either I don't think hers is necessarily the worst compared to some of these other players. If you've looked to somebody like Alexandrova, things could get a little bit difficult there fairly quickly. Even Caroline Garcia, that first round match is a little bit, it could pose some problems there. So, for a combination of current form and draw, I went straight to the bottom to Pegula.
How about you, Steve?
I can sum it up with one hashtag, which I'll put up on the screen.
You fly or you fail. There's only two options.
Fly with Caro. I am jumping on the Caroline Garcia bandwagon this week. It all seems to be working quite well here in terms of a draw. She's played well at Strasbourg in the past. She is surrounded by players who hit the ball pretty hard, and her dad doesn't coach her anymore. It's the three things I wanted out of her draw.
No dad. I didn't realize you had that on the draw list, but it helps.
To be fair, looking at the rest of it, I mean, I do think there is an element of being able to attack, I think, in that third quarter with someone who is, playing at home in conditions that are favourable. I think Garcia, as I said, was 12-4 in her career at Strasbourg and has won the tournament before. It's, Krejcikova is going to be a difficult second-round match if you were to meet her. I'm not really that invested in, Gracheva, Davis, Alexandrova. I think Alexandrova's shown patches, but it's been hard to really jump in. She kind of finds herself under the odds a lot. I'm looking to the fourth quarter. It's tricky. Shelby Rogers, yes, it's some of her better performances on clay have been on the green clay recently. And then looking to the bottom, Pegula, it's just about whether you feel like her hard court form of the last kind of 6 months or so translates to clay more consistently. We probably haven't seen her at her best of late. And I think just looking over here, I'm pretty happy to, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm happy to go with Caro.
Yeah, we talked about it before the show. Just looking at a list of names, I would have picked Krejcikova. Don't love her draw, though. Having Caro there in the second round, maybe Alexandrova, who's starting to sort of put it together. Even someone like Burrell, who could be a wild card that could make her run through here. I really wish she wasn't in this quarter. I still think she has a great chance to come out, though. The fourth quarter is just wide open. This is a nice spot for Pegula. I do think she moves through here because there's just, you'd want someone with kind of a clay pedigree here to kind of upset her, and that person just doesn't exist. So I think it'll be Pegula and then probably Krejcikova. I'll probably be back in Krejcikova in that match with as much support as Pegula's been getting over the last few weeks. But I think this will actually be a pretty fun semifinal here in the bottom half.
Fair enough. I think that just wraps up the draw chat. Shall we go into our picks?
Indeed.
All righty. Let's kick us off, Alex. Who's your pick?
Miss Jill Teichmann. As we talked about, that winner of the Putintseva-Teichmann match, it's just a really nice spot to be in. I'm assuming Andreescu probably doesn't even show up, and if she does, it's going to be a really short week for her. Again, recovering from COVID, getting her first clay match in since 2019, trying to prep for the French Open. Just a lot of reasons to think that she's not going to be here. So, target the other quarter there. Target the people that are going to be close to her, and I like Teichmann.
As do I. So I basically echo everything you've just said, and that will be my ace as well. Candace, who have you gone for as your ace for the tournament? Yeah. My ace of the tournament is Candace being on mute.
Always.
If I can finish the show without going on mute.
It happens with having a dog. You just get automatically used to go on mute just in case they bark. I went with Jessica Pegula. Obviously, we've seen her playing, quite well recently, specifically over in Italy. Her most recent tournament, I think that she's really kind of found herself a bit on this clay court surface. It's really boring. She's short enough that I wouldn't necessarily be backing her, but I do think she has a legitimate chance to win.
Definitely, and I think we're all playing kind of similar games here. I think with the draw and who we're picking. I don't think I need to go into too much detail around my value selection. I think I was pretty clear as we spoke through that it's going to be Caroline Garcia. At the price, she does seem to be decent value, and as I said, it's at home. I do prefer her against those bigger strikers of the ball where she can use their pace a little bit and isn't going to be covering all corners of the court as consistently as she would against, say, a Teichmann or someone similar. So I just think the draw kind of suits her to an extent early in the week, which means that she's probably, by the time this podcast goes up, she's probably found a way to lose in straight sets to Diaz. So that'll be fantastic. Alex, who is your
I wouldn't mind that.
Pick?
Well, I wouldn't mind that because my value pick is Miss Krejcikova. As much as I don't want to pick her to win, she's around 14/15 to 1. I'm sorry, 14/15 to 1 to win this tournament. I think that's a really nice number. Again, if she can get past that match with Caroline Garcia, I think she has all the skills and the clay aptitude to give Pegula a lot of trouble. And I think the final will be really tight if it's her and Teichmann, her and Putintseva, her, anybody there. I like her. I think this is a good spot for her to get a title on clay.
So that's for us now 2 value picks from the bottom half. Have you got someone from the top half, Candace, for your value?
I do. I kind of spoke about it a little bit when we spoke about the top half of the draw, but I went to Shuai Zhang. This is a complete draw play. She has been in woeful form. But if she were to ever get it together, you'd have to think it's going to be on the clay based off what we've seen from her at Roland Garros in the past. Again, you're just playing it off the draw, knowing that the path is there, the opportunity is there if she can take it, and the price is at least large enough to justify somebody who really has struggled to win a match lately.
Definitely. And if we look to just a couple of quick unforced errors for this one, Alex, do you want to go first?
Yeah, touched on Andreescu. Again, hasn't played a clay match since 2019. The most recent thing we heard from her is that she unfortunately got COVID. Hopefully she's getting much better. If she shows up and plays here, it's to play a couple matches and get to Paris and get comfortable to play the French Open. And again, I don't know if she even does either. So giving her a pass this week for sure.
And following on for that, players who we're not quite sure of what their level is. The other one is, Sorana Castella. I think if you were to just quickly look at her recent form, obviously she did win that title a couple of weeks ago, and it's easy to be kind of drawn into that. She did get injured in that last match she played, and we haven't seen her since. This does feel a little bit like a tune-up here for her. The draw is actually pretty favourable when you look at it, but I think for the start of the week at least, I'd rather see her on court, I think, for that first match. I'm not going to be siding with her early in the week, but she has shown, if she's close to that level of fitness, she looked pretty good before she got injured. So it's just kind of a watch and wait. I'd rather wait and see what level she's got before jumping in, particularly with any of my own money anyway. Following on from your unforced error, Alex, I've gone for Bianca Andreescu. Again, depends if she turns up. It kind of falls on the same page there. You feel like if she is there, she's probably more inclined to get involved now that she's seen the draw and that it's qualifier and then qualifier to get to the quarterfinals. But again, we just haven't seen a lot of her on clay over the last couple of years. She just hasn't got to this point of the year or of the season in a position from being injury free enough to tackle the clay to the best of her ability. So happy to consider her overvalued looking at her outright price for here. Candice, who have you gone for?
Well, I'm dovetailing off of your unforced error. I went with Sorana Castella. I understand why she's kind of protected in books because, as Steve mentioned, she was playing well prior to the injury. I just don't think her price is high enough to take into account the fact that we don't know how she's coming into the tournament. So it was plain and simple with that way for me.
Perfect. And Alex, wrap us up with your overvalued player.
Shelby Rogers is the fourth favorite to win this tournament. She is less than 10-1. I'm not really sure why. She's in a quarter with Pegula, who's a favorite to win the tournament. She's going to be a big underdog in that match. If she wins that, it's Alexandrova, maybe Krejcikova. I think she'll be an underdog there. If Andreescu cares, she's a huge underdog in the final. If it's Teichmann or Putintseva or somebody like that, it's pretty close. I don't know who made this number. Maybe they think it's Charleston. I'm not really sure.
Charleston 17.
That would be the dream for Alex.
I know. You'll win that.
Do it. I'm ready. Play about the green clay and pick a winner.
Alex wakes up every morning hoping that there's a WTA announcement saying that the tour will just be played year-round in Charleston. And Emma Navarro will get a wild card every week.
But we did it, folks. That's all the tennis. Again, not the best tennis, but it's okay.
It's French tennis.
Open coming next week. We're going to do all sorts of fun stuff for that. We'll obviously do our full preview show. I think we're going to even try to do some stuff with some kind of like watch party kind of things. I don't know. The two of them are much better at the social media nonsense, so we'll figure something out. But a lot of French Open stuff coming. If you like the show, we'd appreciate a like on YouTube, a review, or a thumbs up, whatever the correct buttons are. All sorts of positive affirmations, follows, and things like that would be great. And we'll be back soon.
All righty. Catch you all very, very shortly. And also just one more thing. We're going to get Alex onto Instagram and TikTok soon. So just keep an eye out for that.